So on the proposed resolution, we have in our packet, in the third paragraph, the first line would be amended, would be fee for day parking fee for residential areas, which would be the title for the $5 fee. So with that, I would recommend approval, or move to approve resolution 2018-05, a resolution to amend the parking enterprise village fee schedule with the one title change in the day parking fee.
And can I make a friendly note? In committee, we did talk about adding to that resolution and having staff come back at the next meeting to amend the other things that were incorrect.
That would be separate. We've instructed them.
I thought that's what we agreed on.
Yeah, but that's not part of this. This is
No,
approving
this
the
is a
resolution.
separate resolution that we directed. I could report that. As trustee Rose, that we directed staff to look at some other fee corrections in here and report back. So there may be another change coming.
As long as I'm in the minutes, that's perfect.
Okay, have you got the change there? Any other discussion?
I just wanted to say that during our board discussions of the parking fee change, that I did not support the fee change from $0 per night for the 20 residential overnight parking to the $2. I don't support this resolution this evening for that reason. I know that some members of the board have even proposed a $3 change. And we had also discussed perhaps looking at, because one of the reasons that we have this fee is because Duncan, our vendor, charges us for a processing fee. So there might be this again in the future. But I will say, as far as my vote tonight, this pertains to this, an opportunity for us to look at how we evaluate parking and our needs, and perhaps we can move not only back to the 20 free, but perhaps even eliminate the overnight parking restrictions. So I just wanted to go on the record for that. And I know that the police department does get revenue from tickets and other things, but I don't think it's, I think as a creative, it's smart, forward-thinking village, especially with our Vision 2025 and using that as a guideline, that would be a great opportunity for us to look at our parking regulations in this village. So, but I do believe a few things, and I think it's important to mention this. I do believe that this $2 a night fee, although for some it's not an onerous fee, for others it is. And we have 53% renters in our village. This disproportionately affects renters as far as the restrictions that we have on the overnight. And that ties into some of our other parking regulations, and I think you said this at the forum this last Sunday in different words, Paul. We have a hodgepodge system of parking in this village, and I understand if some issue comes up, we make a decision, but I think you equated it to whack-a-mole, and there was some other reference you made that I didn't understand. But when we change one thing in one area, it does often impact directly another area, either of the village or of our citizenry. So I do strongly believe that we have to consider all of our residents and look at why we have this restriction and why we're freeing. And the second thing I will mention is that regarding overnight parking, you have to register your vehicle that's going to be on the street prior to, I can't remember what time it is at night, 1 in the morning. And the system shuts down between 1 and 3. And then if you do not do this prior to that, you get a ticket. And there is no other way to offset that. So I also believe that this perhaps isn't the best example that we want to set to people who may have a last-minute guest, or perhaps someone is staying at someone's house and has a beverage or two and decides that the responsible thing is to not drive. So I do think that a policy like this may prevent us from being a progressive community that would want to restrict the amount of people impaired on the road that shouldn't be there otherwise. So I'll get off my soapbox.
Thank you. Thank you. 2 questions. One's process, so Nathan, I'm going to ask you. If we voted for the parking fees 7-0, it was unanimous. So at that time, if we didn't agree, would we have made an amendment? Could we have made a budget amendment? It goes back to what I was asking before.
So I think the question is, what happens if it's in the budget and we approve it
Yeah.
here, but we don't
No,
have
no,
it
no,
in the fee schedule?
before you approve it, so could you have proposed an amendment? Like during the budget, like,
At the budget hearing.
that was my original.
At the
question.
time, I had recommended that we remove the overnight parking issue, and the majority of the board did not.
I do want to know the
Yeah, no,
answer.
It's different than what you're asking.
I'm not sure, so the question is at the budget hearing,
Number
before
55.
the budget has been approved.
Right. Can you propose an amendment if you don't agree with something in the budget?
Before it's been passed.
Yes. Amendment to the proposed budget.
Well, that's certainly on the sheet, that's why the body has to vote on it.
Right.
So at that point, you know, if there's a Robert's Rules of Orders, which is what we follow, allows someone to make an amendment to a motion.
So I think that's what I was asking before on the 55, because we had made amendments before, and I just wanted to know where that falls. It would fall before we adopt the budget. If we don't agree with something, we couldn't convince our peers at that time. Thank you. My other question is, it didn't get recorded into, from committee, but just so everyone's aware of what else was in that resolution that has to come back for next time to be corrected, it's.
Which one are we talking about, the parking?
Yeah, we're going back to parking. A parking lot, per fee, we had questions about the $45. I think it was raised to 50. We're just checking to make sure that,
But that's not part of that,
It's not.
that's not part of the
We're
resolution.
on this $2.
oh,
You're right,
I see what you're
we
saying.
talked about that, but the resolution is just for
But-
these two items.
but the attachment to our resolution, we discussed in committee. So I'd like to just be able to tell the other board members about our discussion, if that's okay. Is that about what, if not, I don't have to.
I would like to respect the time that we have this meeting
Can I-
in here.
Can I,
Unless it's
can
part of
I
the
also have
motion.
reservations about the $2
But I don't
overnight.
have a right to talk about what was talked about in committee. I mean, honestly, I just want to know about like the process.
You also have a right to respect that we have a limited amount of time and that that's something that's going to come up, as Paul mentioned, at a later time.
I'm asking the
Sure,
village attorney because I know we
who's
talked
the
about this in the
committee
last
chair?
month. Yeah.
Were you reporting as the committee chair, or, I mean, I think it's appropriate to say we discussed it in committee, and we either have a recommendation out of committee or not. And any of the other committee members would want to clarify, I think that's
And that's what your memo was.
appropriate.
I don't need you to clarify if nobody else cares, so thank you.
Can I, what is the motion, because I'd like to, can you read the motion, Sarah?
It's to approve the resolution 2805 to amend Parking Enterprise Village fee schedule with the title change, amended day parking fee for the residential. I don't know if I get all that piece, but I'll area.
Can I- And is it, I mean, I'm suggesting that maybe we vote on the two fees separately. So,
I think we'd have to change the resolution. Or it would have to, the whole resolution would have to get.
because I agree with trustee Bottorff, and I also want to point out that we have, I believe I checked it today, like a surplus, we have a fund balance in the parking enterprise fund of $575,000. So I don't think it would be a hardship to the parking enterprise fund if that $50,000 did not materialize. So I guess I'll vote no on the resolution also.
Can I get a clarity on that, Mark? Is that right? Is it, and if so, I know we still have, based on last budget, a $40,000, this is what you recommended to us when we adopted the budget, but there's a $40,000 structural deficit going forward, so we could use our reserve funds if we have them. However, it's a short-term fix, so as long as we know we're coming back to it, I don't like supporting using reserves for an ongoing deficit. But my question to you is, do we have a balance of $500,000 in our parking utility?
Well, in enterprise funds, business funds, parking utility, water utility, sewer utility, the fund balance is not necessarily indicative of cash, but also includes the value of the parking lots that we purchased and various other assets. So I can't spontaneously speak to how much cash we might have available, but it's more than $50,000, but
But that would be 8 years worth. So that's why I wanted clarity, because I know that when you recommended to us during the budget to implement the fee, before we voted, the problem is, or the issue I should say, is that we're paying out 50,000 and we're collecting 10. You know, we had $40,000 that's short. And so if that's structural, that's called a structural problem. And if we just use reserves, if we have 50,000 and we use it this year without addressing where we're going to take it up from in other areas of our budget, I would like to have a comprehensive understanding of that. Because it's not a one, like we always say about our reserves for capital, it's a one-time cost. We don't like to do it for ongoing costs. So that's the only thing I would understand. I'm all for more public, input on this. I had a fireside chat, and the public seemed to be okay once they understood it from the 24 that I talked to. But I would like more public input on it, because I agree, if it's something the residents want on the tax bill rather than on a fee, that's what we should grant them. So I just don't know where. I just want to understand it comprehensively of where the money would come from if we don't have a huge reserve.
So what's the staff recommendation here?
Has it changed?
them on the fee schedule to be consistent with what was approved.
So it's been approved.
It's a cleanup item.
So could I make an amendment then to the motion tonight? Since we would have to vote down the whole resolution in order to separate the two items, could I amend the stated motion?
We would have to rewrite, well, you can amend it however you wish, but we wouldn't be able to vote on it as a resolution without it being recreated. Is that, yeah.
So if
Yeah,
We don't have a resolution.
I'm sorry, if the proposed amendment is to strike a line out of the resolution.
Yeah.
If the proposed amendment is to eliminate the $2 single fund line, we could make
You
that
could do that.
amended, the motion for amendment, and we could pass the resolution with only the $10 date.
Right, and then for getting the other one, we would have to,
Do something else.
don't we have to
Create
amend the
another
budget though?
resolution.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, we
it's
adopted the
actually,
budget.
what we were just discussing over here, is what happens if, you've already made this decision collectively as a body, okay? It's in the budget. This was just, again, just kind of a cleanup item so that we let residents know that this thing exists, that this $2 charge exists, so that any Joe Public can look and say, I'm gonna go on the village website and look and see what it costs me for a temporary single night on-street overnight parking permission, it's $2. Then the question becomes, if we don't put it in, if we don't clean up the fee schedule to include it, is it equitable to charge that to a resident who could say, well, you didn't include it in your fee schedule, I didn't know it existed. So
I have a suggestion.
that's a question for another day, but
Right.
does that help?
It does.
Mark had a comment.
Yeah, I was just gonna, ask for Nathan's opinion. It was my understanding that this fee was approved by the board with the adoption of the budget. And again, that this is just an administrative process that through just in committee, we've identified has sometimes waned when we had changes in the past and not updated the schedule proper that we referred to. So this was an effort to update the two items in the 2018 budget that the board adopted into that fee schedule for clarity. And the finance chair has directed staff to take additional looks at some other actions and again follow through so that we've got a fee schedule that accurately reflects what's been adopted by the board.
So why did we adopt the $2 fee? What was the rationale back in the budget time? I assume it had something to do with Duncan, but let's hear this. So
Okay.
everybody's clear on it.
I'll let you know what I heard about, because I was not a participant
It's
in
all
your
your
meeting, and
fault.
Mark, you can jump in, but we
I
were
could.
looking to recover your expensive utilization of the Duncan system.
Right.
Like
Which is
every
about
other-
$1.50
just every
is what you
other
all said.
interaction, we just forgot it in 2015. So we, if you look at the history, I just add that
So,
first.
and what kind of volume are we talking about? And how much money were we talking about there?
Well, it's hard to predict what behaviors will change when you implement the fee, but we were estimating about $50,000 of revenue would be somewhat commensurate with the costs specifically associated to having the availability to automatically enroll for single night overnight permits.
So what you're saying is that if we didn't implement this $2, we would be out $50,000?
From a budgetary,
About 40, because there's 10,000 extra revenue last
If,
year.
if people use the service and park on the street. So there's, it's circular almost, but yes.
But they've always used the service. If you look at the past 3 years, I had the numbers run, and they've always exceeded, all 20 are.
I would still encourage my fellow trustees to maybe make a stand tonight and vote this down, and then we would have to.
I have a suggestion of the process.
Down
Yeah, I have a suggestion for process. What I wanted to say before, and nobody really, I